The sky doesn't change. No mushroom cloud. No shockwave rippling across the horizon. At 2:47 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the electromagnetic pulse arrives silently, invisibly, writing the same laws of physics that power your phone and keep planes in the air. A high-altitude nuclear detonation, 300 miles above Kansas, releases a burst of gamma radiation that collides with the atmosphere and creates something far more destructive than fire, a cascading wave of electromagnetic energy that sweeps across the continent at the speed of light. In less than 1 second, it travels from the Great Plains to both coasts. You don't see it. You don't hear it. You just notice that everything stops working at once. The hum of civilization, that constant electrical drone you've spent your entire life ignoring, vanishes. And in that silence, 330 million people begin to realize that the world they knew is gone. This isn't a drill. This isn't a blackout. This is the moment when the thinnest veneer separating modern life from chaos evaporates, and what happens next will determine whether you become a survivor or a statistic. As the lights blink out and engines die mid-turn, one truth crystallizes. Everything you depend on was one pulse away from disappearing forever. The strike, 2:47 p.m. The EMP doesn't announce itself. There's no air raid siren, no emergency broadcast interruption, no flash of light on the horizon. The weapon detonates 300 miles above the center of the United States, a point chosen with surgical precision to maximize coverage. The burst of gamma rays interacts with Earth's magnetic field and atmosphere, creating 3 distinct electromagnetic pulses, E1, E2, and E3. E1 arrives first, a nanosecond spike of energy that fries microchips and semiconductor junctions before surge protectors can even detect the threat. E2 follows, similar to lightning but more sustained. E3 comes last, a slow heave of electromagnetic energy that induces currents in long conductors like power lines, transformers, and pipelines. You're driving when it happens? Your car's engine sputters once, twice, then dies completely. The dashboard goes black. The radio cuts to silence mid-sentence. You coast to the shoulder, confused but not yet alarmed. Cars don't just die. You turn the key. Nothing. No click. No whir. No dashboard lights. It's as if the battery was ripped out while you were moving. You look around. Every car on the highway is rolling to a stop. Some drivers try their ignitions. Others step out, phones already in hand. But the phones are dead too. Black screens that won't wake no matter how many times you press the power button. And hospitals, ventilators stop mid-breath. Heart monitors flatline, not because patients died, but because the machines themselves expired. Backup generators kick in automatically, but half of them fail within seconds, their control circuits fried by the same pulse that killed everything else. In the ICU, nurses switch to manual bag ventilation, hands pumping rhythmically to keep patients breathing, while doctors realize that every digital medical record, every automated medication dispenser, every CT scanner and MRI machine is now a useless shell of metal and plastic. Air traffic control screens go black. Pilots lose GPS, radar, radio contact, and in many cases their entire avionics suite. Planes in flight become gliders, their fly-by-wire systems frozen mid-command. Some pilots flying older aircraft with mechanical backups manage controlled descents into fields and highways. Others aren't so lucky. In the first hour, 14 aircraft fall from the sky across the United States. Passengers in the back don't understand why the engines sound different until the nose tips forward and the descent begins. At Hoover Dam, at nuclear power plants, at water treatment facilities across the country, SCADA systems, the supervisory control and data acquisition networks that manage critical infrastructure, freeze or fail. Engineers rush to manual controls, but the transition isn't seamless. Some systems shut down safely. Others begin cascading failures that will take weeks to diagnose if anyone survives long enough to try. The electrical grid, a synchronized web of generators and transmission lines operating at 60 Hz, begins to fracture. Frequency imbalances trigger automatic shutdowns. Transformers, subjected to induced currents from the E3 pulse, begin to overheat. Some explode in showers of sparks and burning oil. Within 15 minutes, the entire eastern interconnection collapses. The western interconnection follows 7 minutes later. The Texas grid, isolated and smaller, dies alone. You stand on the highway shoulder, watching the sun hang in a sky that suddenly feels too big, too empty. Other drivers gather in small clusters, voices rising with speculation and fear. Some think it's a solar flare. Others whisper the word that no one wants to say out loud, attack, but there's no one to ask, no authority to call, no internet to search. The informational infrastructure that once connected 330 million minds into a single nervous system has been severed, and every person is now isolated inside their own skull, guessing. Hour 1. The realization confusion reigns, but panic hasn't arrived yet. People still believe this is temporary. Blackouts happen. Cars stall. Phones die. These are inconveniences, not catastrophes. You walk toward the nearest exit, joining a stream of abandoned vehicles and bewildered drivers. Some try to flag down cars that still run. There aren't any. Every vehicle built after 1980, every engine controlled by a computer chip, is dead. A few older trucks and cars, mechanical dinosaurs with carburetors and distributors, sputter to life. Their owners become instant celebrities, surrounded by crowds offering cash, jewelry, anything for a ride. In cities, the realization comes faster. Traffic lights are dark. Elevators are frozen between floors. Subway trains sit motionless in tunnels. Passengers using phone flashlights until the batteries die, then switching to lighters, matches, anything that burns. Emergency exits become choke points as thousands try to evacuate underground stations at once. On the streets above, gridlock transforms into a pedestrian exodus. People walk not because they know where they're going, but because standing still feels like surrender. Police stations and fire departments operate on backup power, but their communication networks are crippled. Dispatch systems are offline. Radio towers are dead. Officers patrol on foot or in the rare vehicle that still runs, but without coordination, without information, they become isolated islands of authority in a sea of confusion. Some try to direct traffic manually. Others focus on the first signs of disorder, shouting matches at gas stations, shoving at pharmacy counters, the early tremors of panic. Hospitals become fortresses of triage. Doctors operate with pen lights and intuition. Nurses count 4 drips manually, 1 drop per second, calculating medication doses in their heads. Surgical teams work without monitors, without automated anesthesia, without the digital safety nets that modern medicine has relied on for decades. The first deaths come quietly. Patients whose conditions required constant electronic monitoring, whose medications were refrigerated and now warming, whose life support was measured in kilowatts and amps. By the end of hour 1, mortality rates in ICUs triple. You reach a gas station. The pumps are dead. The electronic payment systems are offline. A handwritten sign taped to the door reads, "Cash only, nitrogen monoxide power, closed." A small crowd gathers, voices rising. Someone suggests siphoning gas from abandoned cars. Another voice, sharper, warns against looting. The tension is palpable, a hum of potential violence vibrating just below the surface. You move on, instinct telling you that crowds are dangerous now, even if you don't fully understand why. At Cheyenne Mountain, deep beneath Colorado granite, the North American Aerospace Defense Command activates continuity protocols. Hardened communication systems, shielded by layers of rock and Faraday cages, remain operational. Screens display a map of the United States, now divided into zones of unknown status. The question consuming every analyst and general is singular. Was this the first strike or the only strike? If a second wave is coming, if ICBMs are already in flight, the United States has minutes to decide whether to launch a counterstrike. The fate of billions hinges on incomplete information and the ghosts on radar screens that may or may not be real. Day 1. The breakdown night falls, and the darkness is absolute. No street lights, no headlights. No glow from windows or storefronts. Cities that once burned bright enough to obscure the stars now vanish into a blackness that hasn't existed since the 19th century. You find shelter in an abandoned office building, joining a dozen others who had the same idea. Someone lights a candle. The flame flickers, casting shadows that twist and lurch. Conversations are hushed, speculative. Theories multiply. Terrorist attack, solar storm, government experiment gone wrong. No one knows. Without information, fear fills the vacuum. Water stops flowing by midnight. Municipal water systems rely on electric pumps to maintain pressure. When the pumps die, the water in the pipes drains away, pulled by gravity into reservoirs that no longer refill. Toilets stop flushing. Faucets hiss and sputter, then go silent. For the first time in their lives, most Americans face a reality that billions around the world know intimately. Water is no longer guaranteed. People begin filling bathtubs, sinks, pots, anything that holds liquid, but for many, it's already too late. The pipes are empty. Grocery stores are looted by dawn. Not by organized criminals, but by desperate families. The word looting feels wrong when a mother is grabbing formula for her infant. When a diabetic is searching for insulin that's already starting to spoil in dead refrigerators. But desperation doesn't distinguish between need and greed. Shelves empty in hours. Canned goods vanish first, then dry pasta, rice, beans. Perishables rot where they sit. Freezers become tombs for thousands of pounds of meat and produce. The just-in-time supply chain, that invisible miracle of logistics that kept stores stocked without warehouses, collapses. There are no trucks coming. There will be no restocking. Pharmacies become flashpoints. Medications that require refrigeration, insulin, vaccines, certain antibiotics begin to degrade within 24 hours. Patients with chronic conditions face a brutal calculus. How many days do they have before their prescriptions run out? Pharmacists, operating without digital records, try to dispense medications by memory and handwritten notes. But supplies are finite, and the line outside grows longer, angrier, more desperate with each passing hour. You ration the food you have: a granola bar, half a bottle of water, a pack of gum. It's not enough. You know it's not enough. Others in the building share what they can, a quiet barter system emerging. Someone has a crank radio. You gather around it, desperate for information. Static dominates. Then, faintly, a voice. ... Martial law in effect ... remain in your homes. Federal emergency ... double quotes. The signal fades. You wait, hoping it will return. It doesn't. That 30-second fragment is the only official communication you will hear for 3 days. Law enforcement is overwhelmed. Officers work in shifts, sleeping in stations, patrolling blocks instead of cities. The thin blue line becomes a threadbare suggestion. In some neighborhoods, community watches form organically. Neighbors you've never spoken to become allies. In others, the social contract dissolves. Fires burn unchecked because fire trucks can't respond, because hydrants have no water pressure, because 911 doesn't exist anymore. The sound of breaking glass becomes common. So do gunshots. Day 3. The new order, the initial shock has worn off. Denial is no longer an option. This isn't temporary. Help isn't coming soon. You make hard choices now, the kind you thought only existed in movies. Do you stay in the city where resources are scarce but people are organized? Or do you head to the countryside where resources might exist but isolation is total? Both options carry death. You choose the city. Better to face danger with others than to die alone. Communities begin to stratify. Those who prepared, who kept water filters, canned food, manual tools, become the new middle class. Those who didn't, who lived paycheck to paycheck and relied on infrastructure, become beggars. Skills matter more than degrees now. A mechanic who can fix a generator is worth more than a dozen lawyers. A nurse with trauma training is worth her weight in gold. Social hierarchies invert overnight. Barter economies emerge in parking lots and intersections. Batteries for canned food, antibiotics for gasoline. The exchange rates are brutal and arbitrary. A bottle of clean water costs a watch one day, a wedding ring the next. Cash is worthless. Credit cards are laughable relics. People trade what they have for what they need, and those who have nothing trade their labor, their safety, their dignity. Sanitation collapses. Without water, toilets become unusable. Human waste accumulates in streets and alleys and makeshift latrines that overflow within days. The smell is overwhelming. Dysentery and cholera, diseases eradicated from American cities a century ago, return with a vengeance. The sick have nowhere to go. Hospitals are full, operating in triage mode, turning away anyone who isn't actively dying. The phrase, "I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do," becomes the most common sentence in medicine. You find a community group operating out of a church. They have a well hand-pumped and a rotation of volunteers boiling water over fires. They share food, not equally but fairly. Those who contribute get fed. Those who can't contribute, children, elderly, injured, get fed anyway. It's not charity. It's survival calculus. A community that abandons its weak doesn't survive long. You volunteer for night watch, standing guard with a baseball bat and a flashlight that has 3 hours of battery left. You ration the light, using it only when shadows move in ways they shouldn't. Government response is fragmented. The president, relocated to a hardened bunker, addresses the nation via shortwave radio broadcasts that most people never hear. Martial law is declared in major cities. National Guard units deploy, but without fuel, without communications, their effectiveness is limited. Military engineers begin the monumental task of restoring the grid, transformer by transformer, substation by substation. Progress is measured in city blocks, not states. Estimates suggest full restoration will take years. Most people don't have years. Day 7. The reckoning by the end of the first week, the death toll is incalculable. Hospitals stopped reporting numbers when the bodies outnumbered the morgue capacity. Mass graves are dug on the outskirts of cities. Some are marked. Most aren't. The causes are varied. Dehydration, starvation, violence, disease, lack of medical care. An insulin-dependent diabetic who runs out of refrigerated medication dies within days. A heart patient without access to blood thinners suffers a stroke. An asthmatic without an inhaler suffocates slowly. The fragility of modern life, hidden behind pills and machines, is now exposed in the cruelest terms. You lose weight. Everyone does. Rationing means hunger, constant and gnawing. Your body begins to consume itself, muscle before fat, efficiency prioritized over comfort. Sleep becomes difficult, not because of fear, though fear is always there, but because hunger is a physical presence, a companion that never leaves. You drink boiled water that tastes of ash and pray it's clean, if not to kill you. Communities that cooperate survive. Those that fracture don't. You see both. A neighborhood 3 blocks away descends into warlordism, controlled by a man with a gun and a willingness to use it. Your community, by contrast, operates on consensus. Decisions are made in open meetings. Resources are pooled. It's not democracy. It's pragmatism. A divided group is a dead group. Skills you never thought you'd need become essential. How to purify water with bleach. How to dress a wound without antiseptic. How to identify edible plants. How to fix a bicycle. The library, abandoned and dark, becomes a treasure trove. You and others raid it for books, medical manuals, survival guides, agricultural texts. Knowledge, once digitized and taken for granted, returns to paper. The question everyone asks is, will the power come back? Some believe it will, that engineers are working around the clock, that normalcy is weeks away. Others are less optimistic. Transformers, the massive units that step down high-voltage power for distribution, are custom-built and take months to manufacture. Most were destroyed by the EMP. Replacements can't be imported because global supply chains collapsed the same day the pulse hit. Manufacturing new ones requires factories with power. It's a circular problem with no easy solution. You hear rumors of safe zones, of FEMA camps distributing food and water, of military convoys restoring order. Some people leave to find them. Most never return. You stay. The devil you know is safer than the devil you don't. The long night weeks turn into months. The initial chaos gives way to a grim routine. You wake at dawn because there's no reason to waste candles. You work, hauling water, tending gardens, repairing tools. You eat 1 meal a day, sometimes 2 if the harvest is good. You sleep when darkness falls because there's nothing else to do. Life has simplified to its core elements: water, food, shelter, safety. The psychological toll is immense. You mourn the world that was, the ease and abundance and connection. You mourn friends and family whose fates you'll never know. Communication beyond a few miles is impossible. Letters take weeks to deliver, if they're delivered at all. You write one to your sister in another state, knowing the odds of it arriving are slim. You send it anyway because hope, however irrational, is necessary. Children adapt faster than adults. They don't remember the internet, the smartphones, the instant gratification. For them, this is just the world. They play in streets free of cars, learn skills by doing, and grow up harder and faster than any generation in a century. Adults struggle. Depression is rampant. Suicide is common. The transition from a world of abundance to a world of scarcity breaks many who can't reconcile the loss.